Your memory lies to you, the secret reason you can't trust your own memories. Hello, curious minds. Welcome aboard. Today, we're doing something special, a deep dive through 5 levels of understanding, each one more profound and revealing than the last. And the topic that brings us together is one of the most unsettling and personal ideas out there, that your memory, that sacred library where you store who you are, is actually an incredibly unreliable editor. You might think this is something you already know, that you sometimes forget things, but I promise you it goes much deeper. Understanding how this internal editor truly works isn't just fascinating, it completely reshapes how you see yourself in the world. I promise you this, by the end of this journey, this deep dive through 5 levels, you'll never think about your memories the same way again. Level 1, the surface of what we know. We're all familiar with the most obvious aspect of an imperfect memory, forgetting. You know, where you left your keys, the name of that person you just met, or why you even walked into the kitchen. This happens because our brain isn't a perfect hard drive storing every detail. It's more like a gardener, constantly pruning old or useless branches to make way for new, more important growth. Another phenomenon you've surely encountered is false memories. I'm not talking about anything serious, just those little family squabbles about whether something happened on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, or who said exactly what in a conversation. This affects our daily behavior more than we realize. It shapes our relationships, our arguments, and even our own version of events. We'd swear something happened one way, while the other person remembers it completely differently. An incredibly popular example of this is the Mandela effect. This name refers to a false memory shared by a vast number of people. The most famous case is that thousands remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 80s, when in reality he was released, became president, and passed away in 2013. And a third basic fact, memories are not static. They're not photographs saved in an album. Every time you access a memory, you're not simply viewing it, you're actively reconstructing it. And during that reconstruction, small changes can sneak in. This isn't a design flaw, it has a very clear evolutionary origin. For our ancestors, survival didn't depend on remembering every single detail of every flower they saw in the field. Imagine one of our ancestors. If they were attacked by a predator near specific rocks, they didn't need to remember the exact color of each rock. They needed to remember the essence, danger, rocks, big animal. Memory evolved to create useful summaries for survival, not to be a faithful, objective record. Everything we've discussed so far is just the tip of the iceberg. It's what most people instinctively sense or have heard about memory. But if this is what we see on the surface, what secret mechanisms are driving it beneath? Level 2, the hidden mechanisms. Here comes the first big revelation. There's a process in our brain called memory reconsolidation, and it's an absolute game changer. It means that every time you access a memory, it becomes malleable, fragile, like fresh clay. For a brief period, you can modify it before it gets saved again, before it reconsolidates. Your memory isn't read only, it's read and write. And knowing this has a dual application. On the opportunity side, it gives us an incredibly powerful tool. If we understand that memories can be edited, we can work to change their emotional impact. For example, in trauma therapy, people are helped to access a painful memory in a safe environment. By doing so, they can associate that memory with new feelings of safety and control, rewriting the emotional response. It's literally editing the past to heal the present. But of course, there's also the risk. This same mechanism makes us terribly vulnerable to suggestion. If someone asks us leading questions about an event, they can implant details that never actually occurred in our memory. Psychologist Elizabeth Loftus, a pioneer in this field, brilliantly demonstrated this. In her studies, she managed to make people remember getting lost in a shopping mall as children or seeing non-existent traffic signs simply by using the power of suggestion during questioning. It's a bit unnerving, isn't it? Now let's talk about an invisible rule that governs how we value our past experiences. It's known as the peak end rule. This rule states that we don't judge an experience based on the average of how we felt throughout. No, we judge it almost exclusively by 2 moments, the most intense point, the emotional peak, and the very end. Think about it. You could have a 2-week vacation that was overall pretty mediocre. But if the last day was absolutely spectacular, it's very likely you'll remember the entire vacation as fantastic. Your memory edited out the boredom and focused on the great ending. There's another key internal structure. Memories aren't just data, they come with an emotional tag. A part of our brain, the amygdala, is responsible for attaching these tags. This was good, this was dangerous, this made me happy. And this leads us directly to a cognitive bias, which is like a mental shortcut that sometimes leads us to faulty conclusions. In this case, it's the rosy retrospection bias. This is a fascinating design quirk. It's the tendency to remember the past as much better than it actually was. When recalling, the brain tends to focus on positive emotional tags and minimize negative ones. That's why we often think the good old days were so much better. An incredibly effective strategy to counteract this is something as simple as keeping a journal. Writing down what you feel and what happens in the moment creates an external record that cannot be rewritten by your internal editor. It's like having quality control for your own memories. So, the next time you feel nostalgic for a past era, pause and ask yourself, am I remembering the full movie with all its good and bad parts, or just the highlight reel? There's an ancestral custom that shaped our modern memory, oral tradition. For millennia, knowledge was passed down through stories, through narratives. We didn't have books, we had tales. The practical takeaway for today is incredibly powerful. If you really want to remember something, whether for an exam or a project, don't try to memorize isolated facts. Turn them into a story. Our minds aren't designed to remember lists, they're designed to remember narratives. And all this leads us to the key real-world insight. If your memories are editable, if they're tinged with emotion, if they organize themselves like a story, then your identity isn't a fixed truth. It's a story you tell yourself. The guiding principle here is this: you are not your memories. You are the narrator of your memories. This means that in real life, you have the power to choose which memories you focus on. You can choose which moments define your story. You can't change the facts, but you can change the meaning you assign to them. You can be the hero of your own story, not the victim. Understanding this is liberating. It gives you the pen to be the conscious author of your own life, rather than just a reader of a script written by a capricious editor. But if you thought we already had a clear picture, get ready, because here's where the story descends into true chaos. Level 3, the chaos of reality. We enter the first major controversy, a true battlefield in psychology: repressed memories. The idea that a person can suffer such a terrible trauma that the brain buries it completely, sometimes for decades, only for it to be recovered perfectly intact later on. Here, there are two very clear camps. On one side, some therapists and their patients argue it's a real and necessary defense mechanism. On the other, many cognitive scientists warn that often these recovered memories are actually false memories, inadvertently created through suggestion during therapy. And the stakes are immense. For one side, it's about validating victims' suffering and helping them heal. For the other, it's about protecting innocent people from being accused of terrible crimes they never committed. It's a head-on clash between two types of justice. Now, let's challenge a popular belief almost all of us hold: the idea that memory works like a video camera, objectively recording events so we can later play them back. This leads us to debunk a widespread myth: photographic memory. While some people do have extraordinary memories, the idea of a brain that records reality with perfect fidelity, like a photograph, simply doesn't align with what we know from neuroscience. Every memory is a reconstruction. The psychological reason we love to believe in this myth is because it gives us a sense of certainty. The world is chaotic and confusing. The idea that, at least inside our heads, we have a faithful record of the truth is incredibly comforting. And here arises a stark paradox. To get up in the morning and function, we need to trust our memory. But to be truly wise and critical, we need to know that we cannot blindly trust it. This becomes a philosophical dilemma without an easy solution. How can we build a stable sense of who we are on foundations, our memories, that we know are constantly shifting like quicksand? Let's now adopt a critical point of view toward a system that relies heavily on memory: the legal system. Here's an ethical objection we should ask ourselves more often. We know that witness memory is incredibly fallible and suggestible, and yet eyewitness testimony remains one of the most powerful pieces of evidence in a trial. How many wrongful convictions have been based on blind faith in an unreliable editor? And if that weren't enough chaos, let's talk about another controversy that's no longer science fiction: the ethics of memory modification technologies. 20 years ago, this was the stuff of movies. Today, with experimental techniques that allow us to weaken or even strengthen specific memories in laboratory animals, the debate among scientists is real and urgent. Should we have the power to erase trauma? And who decides which memories get erased? All of this connects directly with the human condition. We are, in essence, the only animals that care about their past and their future. We are the stories we tell ourselves. And this raises a fundamental problem for us as a species. If our individual and collective memories are editable narratives, does something like an objective historical truth even exist? Or are there only competing versions? As you can see, memory isn't a neatly organized file. It's a political, emotional, and philosophical battlefield waged within each of our minds. You've survived the chaos. Now it's time to uncover the details that separate the curious from the true connoisseurs, the experts. Level 4, expert knowledge. We're going to talk about a concept rarely mentioned outside of neuroscience labs: the memory engram. Technically, an engram is the specific set of neurons in the brain that activate together to form a memory. It's the physical and biological trace an experience leaves in your brain. The best analogy to understand it is this. Imagine your brain is a night sky full of stars. A memory isn't a single star. A memory, the engram, is a constellation, a specific pattern of stars that light up together. And we have to talk about a key but often forgotten figure, the German biologist Richard Seemann. At the beginning of the 20th century, long before we had the technology to observe it, he theorized the existence of these engrams. His contribution was that of an unsung hero. He proposed that each experience left a mnemic trace, a physical imprint. He was ridiculed or ignored in his time, but modern science has shown that, in essence, he was right, a true visionary. Now, an alternative, or perhaps rebel theory. The classic idea is that a memory is stored in one specific location, but this theory proposes that memories aren't stored in a single site. Rather, they're distributed throughout the entire brain, like a hologram. This perspective is fascinating. It suggests that forgetting isn't a flaw, but an essential and active feature of learning. The brain needs to forget, it needs to weaken less important neural connections to form new, more relevant ones. Forgetting isn't losing information, it's gaining clarity. And here's a research detail that challenges everything we think we know. Studies from institutions like MIT have used a technique called optogenetics, which uses light to activate neurons, and have managed to reactivate memories that a mouse seemed to have forgotten. This is profoundly counterintuitive. We think of forgetting as if the file has been permanently deleted. This research suggests that sometimes the file is still there, intact. What we've lost is access to it, the pathway to retrieve it. And this niche detail connects several of the ideas we've already seen. It links to the engram, which is the pattern of neurons, and to reconsolidation. If memory is a neural pathway, every time we traverse it by recalling it, we're reinforcing that path. But we can also veer off course slightly, creating a new route. And here's the aha moment. Remembering isn't an act of passive retrieval. It's an act of active creation. Memory isn't a noun, it's a verb. It's not something you have, it's something you do. This level of detail gives us a much more authentic vision. Our memory isn't a flawed system. It's an incredibly dynamic and adaptable system, designed not for perfect fidelity, but for the creation of meaning. From here, we enter uncharted territory. Do you dare to look towards the final frontier? Level 5, the final frontier. Let's talk about a futuristic idea that's becoming less distant every day, the possibility of creating digital engrams, the ability to back up our memories or even transfer them. Imagine 100 years from now. Could we edit our memories like someone edits a text document, eliminate the pain of a loss, or implant the memory of having learned to play the piano without ever actually doing it? And this is where science bumps up against its limits. We can know which neurons activate, but we can't explain why that activation feels like the nostalgia of your first love. That's the so-called hard problem of consciousness. It's then that philosophy must take over with profound questions. If you edit a traumatic memory, are you still the same person who survived that experience? If your identity is based on your memories, and these are editable, what exactly is the self? And the deepest philosophical implication is this. If our past is malleable through the act of remembering, then reality isn't something that simply happens to us. It's something we are actively co-creating moment by moment with our memory. Understanding this is key for the future of humanity, because not only individuals have edited memories, societies do too. Think about it, many of the great global conflicts are fueled by collective memories, by historical narratives about past grievances. If as a species we understood that these memories are narratives, not absolute truths, we could open the door to reconciliation and build a future with a different script. And here's the final idea, the most provocative statement of all. Your memory didn't primarily evolve to remember the past. It evolved to predict and simulate the future. We use the edited fragments of what was to build models of what could be. We aren't just recorders of history, we're navigators of tomorrow, and our memories are the map, a map we constantly draw and redraw. Our deep dive through the 5 levels has concluded. Take a second, take in the full picture. Look how incredibly far we've come. At the beginning of this journey, we talked about something as simple and familiar as forgetting where you left your keys. It was our tip of the iceberg, our surface of what we knew. And now look at that initial idea and contrast it with the final idea we've arrived at, that your brain is a future simulation machine that uses a constantly edited version of the past to build the very fabric of your reality and your identity. We've gone from a small technical glitch to discovering the creative engine at the very heart of the human experience. That's been the transformation of our understanding today. And now I ask you, which idea from this whole journey has impacted you the most? Which one really clicked for you? I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your time, for your curiosity, and for accompanying me on this deep dive. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I'm fascinated to read how these ideas resonate with each of you. If you enjoyed this deep dive, subscribe so you don't miss the next ones, and share this video with someone whose mind you think is ready for this conversation. Keep questioning, keep exploring. I'll see you in the next intellectual abyss. If you could edit just one memory, which one would it be?